Camera, action.
Welcome back, everybody, to another review. Today we're going to be talking about the latest film in the Scream franchise, Scream 7. So here we are at the seventh installment of the Scream franchise, and for anybody that doesn't know me, I absolutely love the Scream franchise. It's probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. The first one in particular is really a comfort movie for me, and I don't know, I love that first movie so much, but I've grown to love this franchise just as much, and this is really one of the only horror franchises that stays really consistent with what it's done. Like Halloween and Nightmare and Jason and all those really have their own bad movies, but you can still have fun with those. But I feel like this franchise overall is really the one that stayed consistent with most of it. I mean, I know a lot of people hate Scream 3, but even Scream 3 is a pretty good movie. Like, I still enjoy that one. So I had a lot of excitement for this going into, just for my pure love of this franchise. I know there's a lot of stuff outside of this franchise currently that has been going on, and I'm not really going to get into any of that. I'm just here to talk about the movie and focus on the movie. So we're back in this one with our OG final girl, Sydney Prescott, who in this one she's kind of moved on from everything that happened in Woodsboro. She has a family now. She's trying to settle down and just put all that stuff behind her and really live, the best life that she can. And of course, something happens, and here we are with another Ghostface killer that's come to really not only attack her, but really go after her daughter. So it was really cool to see Kevin Williamson kind of take up the reins for this one as a director. Obviously he wrote the first one and the second and fourth one, I do believe. I can't remember if he had anything to do with the third one. I don't think he did. Don't quote me on that. But it was cool to see what he was going to do as a director, as coming off of, I've only known him to really direct one other film, and that's one film I have not seen. So I was very curious to what he was going to bring to this franchise. I was a huge fan of what the Radio Silence guys did to this franchise. I think they were a really good fit. I think when Christopher Landon was announced to be the director for this one, I thought he was going to be a really good fit. I know stuff fell through with that, so he departed, which I don't blame him for. And I'll be honest, I think he brought a lot of things that were really good to look at. I think, it's beautifully shot. There are certain scenes that are really crafted really well that bring some really good tension. There's one in particular I'll talk about later, but really good tension through certain scenes, and I think the way that he kind of drives the story in certain ways, I think he did a really good job with that. And like I said, there's just visually shots. It's really appealing to look at. There's obviously the shot that was in the trailer of the house burning down behind him. That's visually to look at. There is a kill later on in the movie that is visually appealing to look at. I'm trying not to give anything away, but it's kind of homage kill, but it has its own flavor to it in a way. So I thought that was really well done and really cool how they did that. And kind of brings something to this movie that, even though it's somewhat familiar because it's kind of going for that nostalgia kind of feel, it does have its own originality to it and kind of Kevin Williamson's own thing, which I thought was really cool. I think all of our characters are really good. I think, obviously Neve Campbell is Sydney Prescott. She comes back. It's almost like she really never left this role. I can tell this is a role that she really cares about and something that she really, puts her all into, and just something that she really wants to give back to the fans on with this type of role. And she's fantastic. I really love her. I had no problem with her. I believe in the stuff that she's going for in this movie, where, again, it's going to be that, typical cliche of, oh, there's more trauma and whatnot. It seems like it's been played out now, but she does a really good job with that, and the whole thing of how she's worried about passing certain things down to her daughter. And there's a lot of scenes where you can really feel that pain in her voice and what she's trying to say, and not even sometimes with what she's saying, but with how she looks, and how she just does a really good job of portraying all that and bringing it to life and making it really believable. And really, in a situation, like I said, that's become so cliche, I still really care about her character. She's legit my favorite final girl of all time, so I still have probably some nostalgia love there, so that's, probably why, but I cannot help but to care for her and everything that she's going through in this movie. I also really like this new dynamic that is brought to the character of Sydney, where now she's a mom and she has these new responsibilities and with a family. And I think that just brings this more emotional weight to her. I think that brings a lot more to explore for her character and a lot of different directions that we can go with her character now. And I think it's cool as, somebody who's been through all this stuff, now that she gets to be a mom. I think there's just so much there to really chew on. So I think that was a really cool thing to really explore and bring to her character overall. I think the girl Isabel May that plays her daughter, she does a really good job. Now I know she's been in like the 1923 show, and I think the one before that. I have not seen anything she's ever been in, so this is my introduction to her. And I thought she did really good. It's kind of, she plays almost like this opposite character of Sidney Prescott, where Sidney's more of the fighter and the more the one to go get shit done. And she plays more of the shy, timid one who doesn't really know any of that stuff. And so it was a really cool dynamic for those two characters to play off of. And of course, that brings some drama into the movie as well that, they'll have to figure out. But I just thought she did a really good job of playing this character. And, it's not one of those movies really where it's the passing of the torch type thing, which is something I was worried about because of the whole thing with the I Know What You Did Last Summer movie and whatnot. But the characters in this one I do like much more than that movie. But that was one big thing I was worried about. But she does a really good job, like I said, of playing that character. And it's great to see her go toe-to-toe with Neve Campbell, like I said, and just play these two completely separate type of different characters, and I just thought they played really well off of each other. She's also the type of character where you do get enough of her that you do care. It might not be like super deep, but you do really care about her character and this dynamic with her mother, and it's enough to compel the story forward to where you're like, yeah, I want to see where this goes, whether it be this movie or wherever in the future. I would really like to see maybe more of this character as we go on. Courtney Cox is back as well, and of course she's great in that, in that role as well. I think it's like she never left that role. She brings everything that she had from the previous movies to it, and she's just a lot of fun. And she's not in the movie a lot, but she's there. I think she serves her purpose with what she is given. I do agree with what a lot of people said, though. I do think that she probably should have went out in Scream 6 because of everything that happened with that, and I just felt like maybe with Scream 6, they took a lot of liberties with that movie because maybe in 5, they did what they did with Dewey, so I felt like maybe they were a little bit scared to kind of go that route with another legacy character. But I do agree that I think with the stuff that she sustained in Scream 6, that probably should have been enough to take her out, but here we are. I think our other returning characters, the twins, Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding, I think they're really good in this movie. I have a lot of fun with them. I like them in the previous movies. I really buy into them as twins. I think they have a really great sibling dynamic with each other. So I really buy into that. And really, when they first appear on screen for here, Mason Gooding has a really great joke that kind of leads into what, they're doing now. So I thought they were really good in this movie as well. Like I said, they're not in it a lot, but I do like them, and I'm glad if they were trying to find some way to bring them back. I did like how they fit them into this movie. I thought it was cool, and it did work for me. And I'll be honest with you, one of the biggest casting surprises for me in this movie was the character of Joe McHale, who plays Sidney's husband in this movie, and it was one that when it was first announced, I was kind of like, why? I'm like, I know you couldn't get Patrick Dempsey, but why? So it was actually a nice surprise. Like, I thought he played a really cool, decent, down-to-earth dad that you really gave a shit about. So, I mean, I thought that was I really enjoyed that. Like I said, it was a big surprise to me, so kudos to you. And it's the same for all of our supporting cast with, like, her friends and whatnot throughout the movie. They're there, like, it's a typical Scream thing where they give these little hints and backstories of, like, what they're into, what they like, and all that good stuff, but it's not a lot to really mull over and be like, oh boy, I can do a deep dive on these characters. Really, that's reserved really for our basic main characters, which I understand that. So most of these characters, in these horror movies, they're here for cannon fodder, and they're just here to be killed off and whatnot. But that's kind of what they are for this movie, but it's not, but that's okay for this kind of a movie because you're so invested in these other characters and what they're going through. So, I mean, even if there's not a lot there, you're still not like, obnoxiously annoyed where you're like, oh my God, please just get these characters out of here already. So there's none of that, which I'm happy for. I think the kills are really good in this movie. I think they're very a step up from things that's been done previously in the franchise. I know I've seen a lot of people mainly bitch about the kills in these movies, how it's nothing but stab, 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 stab. It's that's it. And this one, it really takes that up a notch. There's actually one pretty fucking awesome kill in this movie that I don't want to give away, and I'm not going to give any spoilers or anything. I probably should have said that at the beginning, but no spoilers whatsoever in this movie. But it is a really cool kill of how they do it and how it plays out, and it almost ends on this humorous tone too, which I thought was really cool. While there is a lot of just stabs and stuff in this movie as well, there is a couple kills, including the one that I just mentioned, that is really cool and really different, that does bring a different flavor to the franchise, which is nice. I'll admit, even some of just the stabs that we get in this movie are pretty brutal. I mean, they just keep going and going and going. You're like, damn. And really, it's the same way with Ghostface. I guess you could kind of argue this with Scream 6 as well, that I felt like Ghostface was like on a mission in this movie. Like, he's pretty fucking brutal. Like, he's on the mission. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. Come hell or high water, I'm doing it. So you just felt that like kind of anger from that Ghostface in this one. Like, he was just pretty brutal. And like I said, he's pretty brutal in 6 as well. But this one, I don't know. It's like he was just, straight out on a mission in this one. And I do think there is some very good tense sequences throughout this movie. I think there are some really cool setups. Of course, if you've seen horror movies, horror movie fans know that music swells, goes silent, boom, expect a jump scare, all that good stuff. But they do a great job of like how they did in previous movies and how they, think, try to trick your expectations into thinking that, guess here comes a jump scare, and then the character goes somewhere else and there's nothing there, and then it kind of catches you off guard a little bit. They did that a few times throughout this movie, which I really enjoyed, and I thought, okay, good, they're not going the typical jump scare route. While there is jump scares in this movie, of course, they do mix it up enough to where it's not so overwhelmingly like, oh god, here comes another jump scare. They do it enough to where it builds to something different. And like I said, there's also a couple really great scenes of tension throughout this movie. There's one in particular that I really like that pretty much has Joe McHale's character kind of walking through the garage. It's almost like they're doing some reconstruction on their house. So there's all this plastic and stuff around the house, and the way that it's shot and the camera's rotated around the character and the character, how he walks through, and when you think you see Ghostface and then you don't and all that stuff. I thought that scene was really well crafted and just really did a great job of really building tension. One of the other things I really liked about this movie as well is that I did like the going back to the small town setting. I know it's not Woodsboro, but I did like this little town that Sydney was in. I know with 6 we went this big scale with New York, and it was really cool. And somebody like me, I was excited to see Ghostface go somewhere other than Woodsboro, so I thought that was a really cool setting to put him in. But it is nice to have him back in this small, quiet town, and maybe just because I grew up in a small town that I just kind of connect more with those type of stories and those type of settings and whatnot. So I just thought the town was a really cool set. Like I said, it's not Woodsboro, obviously, but it is cool to kind of have him back in that element again. Now moving into my mixed aspects about this movie, one in particular is our opening scene. I kind of could tell by the trailer that what scene was going to be our opening scene, and while it is cool and it did have a lot of interesting stuff that I liked about it, it just wasn't anything that was memorable to me. It just didn't stand out among stuff like the others, for example. And don't get me wrong, there's things like this in every franchise where you have obviously some cold opens that are stronger and some that are weaker. And this one I just felt was on the weaker side. It's just one that I don't feel is very memorable or all that memorable compared to some other ones. Like for me personally, you'll never beat the cold open of the original. And I think as time has gone on and the more of these movies that they make, Scream has kind of become known for that. It's kind of become known for this, their cold opens, like how good is the cold open going to be? I remember when Scream 6 was coming out, everyone was like super hyping up the cold open of that one because everyone was like, oh, this is going to be great, and how they said it was really the best one since the original and whatnot. And I don't feel that way about the opening of 6, but, I do think it's a stronger one than what we got in this one. Like I said, I think the whole thing that they're going for with the Airbnb and the things like that and the 2 characters that are throughout it is pretty cool, and I understand what they're doing to try to, wash that away to move on to where they are now. Totally get that. I just felt like at the end of the day, it was something that you're like, it's all right. One of the other mixed things I had was the member berries aspect of this movie. They're kind of sprinkled in all over the place, and they're paying homage to a lot, especially the original, which is fine and I'm cool with. But after a while, you're like, I get it, dude. I totally get it. Let's focus on your movie. Let's not focus so much on the nostalgia part of it as fans, yeah, nostalgia is great. We have a lot of stuff. Like I said, I have a lot of nostalgia for the first one of my favorite movies of all time. But I have that movie, so it's like, let's not bury your movie in so much member berries that you're like, you get lost in that. And I feel like while they do some really good homages, there is some where I'm like, okay, all right, I get it, it's fine, but let's move on. Especially when it came to one scene in particular, and that's kind of more my negative, so I'll get into that in just a second. But I really kind of wish they toned down a lot of that. Like, a lot of it kind of felt like, how the newest Halloween trilogy kind of paid homage to a lot of the other movies and whatnot. And you're like, okay, dude, it's cool to see all that stuff, but after a while, you're like, let's move on and get to your movie. Now, moving on to my negatives, and all these negatives might be, obviously it's just a me thing because this is just my personal opinion. But there was something about this movie when it was over. I kind of sat there for a minute through the credits, and something hit me that I was like, man, it's like something was kind of off throughout the whole movie for me, and I don't know what it was. And the best way I could describe it was, when the credits hit, was I was like, man, this just didn't feel like a Scream movie to me. I don't know what it was. I don't know if something was missing or what the formula was that maybe they just didn't have or what, but it just didn't capture what I felt like a Scream movie feels like for me. Like, for example, all the other Screams, especially the first one, have a particular feel to me. And I never once got that feeling throughout this movie. I was, excited to be back in the theater to see another Scream movie. But at the same time, I was also slowly getting more disappointed because I never got that feeling. This next thing I'm going to have to try to tiptoe around as best as I can, so I can't really talk about it because I don't want to spoil anything. But they set something up kind of early on in this movie that I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I said, if you end up going that route throughout this entire movie, and when certain things happen later on in the movie and you end up sticking with that, I think it's really going to upset, irritate, and possibly downright really piss off Scream fans, like big, massive Scream fans. Now, why myself wasn't angry or upset at that, at that particular moment or at that particular thing in this movie, I did find myself being like, man, there's going to be some people that just are really, really going to be upset about this. And same way what I talked about in my mixed aspect, there's a portion in this movie, again, of another memberberry section that I felt like was not needed whatsoever. It was clearly there just for the fans, and which is cool at the end of the day, but I felt like it was really cheap and quick. Like, it was like, here's something you wanted, here's something else you wanted. Isn't this cool? Like, this is awesome, right? And it didn't feel like it was earned. It just felt like a real cheap trick, where you're just like, here you go, this is what you wanted, now be happy. And I just didn't feel like we needed that. You could have cut that little teeny part out of this entire movie. Everything would have still been the same. And I just don't think it was earned. And I feel like maybe that might come off more as insulting to certain fans than it will as like this, oh my God, that was awesome moment. But I don't know. That's just me, though. Again, it's one of those things I cannot talk about because I don't want to spoil anything. And one of my biggest negatives about this movie is the killer reveal and the killers period. And again, it's something I can't really talk about, but I felt like this movie did not build up to these killers the way that the others did. It almost to me felt like the last part of this movie was kind of rushed when it got to the killer part. I don't know if like something changed or they had to do a rewrite or something somewhere, but something just didn't sit right. It almost just felt like there was just no build up. It was very boom, 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 and revealed. And you're like, okay. And I really wasn't a big fan of the motivations in this movie. I just thought they were kind of really, really weak. Like I said, it's the same with any other movie in this franchise. Some motivations are weaker and some are pretty strong and whatnot. It depends on who you are and what you like throughout this franchise. But I felt like, for me personally, this was one of the weakest. And I know a lot of people thought that 6 was really weak. I think this one, to me personally, is by far the weakest motivation in this entire franchise. I even saw somebody say that, oh, they did that, they built that up for comedy, or it's for comedy purposes. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, even still, and they were like, oh yeah, if you didn't pick up on that, if you didn't get it, it's your loss. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how was that even played for laughs or set up to be something comedic? I was like, what? And I don't feel like the killers in this movie are memorable by any means whatsoever. And honestly, there is something that happens after the reveal that it's a blink and you miss it moment. I literally, when the movie was over, I was like, wait a minute, what happened to so and so? And yeah, even so, I even had to ask somebody. I said, "What happened to so and so?" And they had to explain to me what happened to them. And it was almost like a moment in Shane Black's Predator when Sterling K. Brown gets, like that. And you're like, "Oh, where did his character go for the rest of the movie?" There's literally scenes in this movie, again, without spoiling anything, where they're dealing with a particular ghost face and whatnot. And literally, I'm like, "Oh, there's still somebody else out there, isn't there?" And then they just never show back up again. And you're like, what the hell happened to them? So literally, if you get up to go to the bathroom or shit, if you even just blink or bend down to take a sip of your drink or something, you'll miss it. And I was paying attention to the screen and I missed it. So apparently, I must have blinked pretty good during that scene because I was like, where the hell did that character go? I don't know. As coming from somebody that really loves this entire franchise, and I've loved pretty much every movie in this franchise, to me, then people might disagree. That's the beauty of art. But to me, this was the weakest killer reveal and the weakest motivation, like I said, in this entire franchise by a landslide. There is more that I want to say about the reveal and the killers, but I can't, again, because I don't want to spoil anything. But there's even, I've talked about this in other reviews before, but when I come to whodunits, especially Scream, I don't ever want to know who the killer is. For me, I like being that guy that gets to have fun with the reveal and be like, ooh, we're getting close. So now, like, we're getting close to these motivations and whatnot. So now let me try to piece this stuff together. And like I said, this one is so quick that it really doesn't, yeah, you don't really have time for that. But in this one, there is a scene, and I'm not going to say what scene or who says it or anything like that, but there's a piece of dialogue that is given. It's real quick. It's just a conversation that immediately right there, I was like, oh, well, that person's the killer. So, got that one. Now, don't get me wrong, I was happy to be back in a theater watching a Scream movie on the big screen and really with a lively audience. There were certain scenes when certain dialogue was said or when certain characters showed up, people were cheering and clapping and whatnot. And I thought that was really cool. Like I said, it was just one of those things when it ended that I just don't know how I felt. I didn't feel that feeling, and I've been sitting here trying to process it for a while, and the best way I can describe it was I just left this one really disappointed. It's probably because I put my own expectations into it and I went into it very excited and really like, fuck yes, we're getting another Scream movie, blah blah blah. But yeah, at the end of the day, I was disappointed in this. I'm very interested to see where this one is going to land with audiences overall, because I've seen this movie so split and divided, how a lot of people are very, yeah, this is totally the worst of the franchise by a landslide. Then I've seen people that really just had a good time with it and really enjoyed it. So I'm very curious to see where people land on that. I know that Kevin Williamson even said that this movie is very personal to him for particular reasons, and I totally get that. I just wish that I felt the same way that he did. And this is not a movie that I hate by any means, or a movie that I won't ever watch again by any means, anything like that. It's like I said, this is the most consistent horror franchise, in my opinion, that I still think makes and produces good movies. Just sometimes the story is weaker than others. And even if that's the case, if this is still our weakest story, hey, that's still pretty good in my books. I'm gonna burn it all down. Mother! So overall, if you're a Scream fan, I would say check this movie out, but maybe temper your expectations. But then again, who's to say? Because you might go in this movie and walk out and be like, damn, that was awesome. I loved that movie. I thought it was great, fantastic. Top 3, top 2, whatever of the franchise. That might be you. Or you might come out and feel the same way I did, where you're kind of disappointed, or you were a little, or you might just downright hate it. I don't know. That's the beauty of art. But if you do go see it, maybe just temper your expectations a little bit, and shit, that might help you out in the long run, where you might be like, damn, that was actually pretty good because I went in with my stuff lowered a little bit. But I don't know. So it's just one of those things where, like I said, I'll be very curious to see where the audience lands on this movie overall. Thank you, everybody. That's my review for Scream 7. If this is the review that you're finding me on, please come on over and check out my channel. I have a slew of other movie reviews out there for you to check out and hopefully binge on a little bit. If you have seen Scream 7, please let me know what you thought about it, what worked for you, the things that didn't work for you. If you are going to talk spoilers, just do your best to put something in there to kind of, space it out a little bit, where if somebody's scrolling through who hadn't seen the movie is like, oh shit, that's a spoiler, let me scroll past that. So put like a big spoiler thing or something at the top or whatnot. But if you are going to do that. But I am curious where you land on this, because I've seen so many divided people and so many mixed things about it. I am curious what works for you and what didn't work for you, and the stuff you loved and hated and all that good stuff. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That way I can see all of you in the next one. Thank you all so very much.